In this video, I get to review a couple of Hoyt products back here behind me. I'm gonna unbox them, set them up, and take them outside and get a tune for them at 30 meters. Probably shoot them through a chronograph just to see what type of speeds I'm getting as well. And then I'll do a follow-up video to this where I shoot 70 meters, a 36-0 round with them, and give you some good feedback on this Hoyt Exceed and the Hoyt Velos limbs. I did open up these boxes. Yeah, I guess I opened up both boxes, the limbs and the riser. This is the Grand Prix version. I also have formula versions as well. I've got the XI as well as the Velos and the formula limbs too. That'll be a review in another video. But in this video, we're gonna review the Hoyt Velos limbs along with the Hoyt Exceed riser. So, I have put my hands on these limbs. I did moderate testing on them already, and I have not yet given real feedback on them and how they feel, how they look, or anything along those lines. First off, right out of the box, I really, really like them. These are the matte finish. I am very partial to the matte finish as far as the visual appeal to them. Also, it is a very, very thin clear coat. So I'll tell you a story way back when, when I shot for Hoyt for a while. They did one version of limbs for me in a matte finish, and I really liked them because the clear coat was so thin and I didn't have any sort of the issues that, some people have had in the past with their limbs. And I'm glad to see that the matte finish are still extremely minimal as far as the amount of clear that is on these limbs. So you won't see changing of alignment or poundage or anything along those lines in the future. They are very nice, very, very clean. I see very minimal imperfections in the limbs themselves. When I say minimal, I see a dust fleck in one spot. It's really nothing, it's just a dust fleck. They are a little rough on the edges of the limbs and through this area of the limb up here. The actual clear coat for the high gloss versions kind of flows out and levels over a lot of these surfaces, so it takes out some of the imperfections in the actual layup of the limb. That's not an imperfection literally, it's just, you put a lot of stuff that's self-leveling on a surface and it's going to smooth out, so that's to be expected. So these are 42-pound long limbs of the bamboo Velos, and I played with some bamboo limbs in the past, right before when I switched from Hoyt to Win & Win, and I like the bamboo. It's pretty nice. I think I still probably prefer the foam limbs, but these look quite nice. The limb tips are pretty standard from what I remember Hoyt's being. They've maybe thinned up a little bit over the years. The dovetail's still very, very firm as usual that I've used with them in the past. And overall, everything looks pretty good to me, to my eye. So I'm happy to see that they have really stepped up their game on the graphics too. They look really sharp. I like the graphics. They look really good to me. Now, as far as the riser goes, it's really interesting because I pulled this out of the package and the grip's not on it, I think. So you look at it, there's no grip, or the grip's in the package and for the bow, but yet it comes with a grip. So I don't know if this is how they normally come with two different grips, but I'm gonna assume that's how they would come from the factory like this, with two grips, one in the package, one on the bow. I don't live in California, so I can remove this. And this is the, I don't know what they would call this color, MSLT. Honestly, I don't know what color this is. It's like a matte navy blue, really, really sharp, really good looking bow. I've always been a fan of, the Hoyt anodizing and all that stuff. They've just done great jobs over the years. I'm excited to play with these limb rockers, I think. I don't know what they call them. I gotta look on the package and so I can make sure I use the right terms for everybody. But I am so happy that they don't have the shims that you need to adjust the limb alignment anymore. I did a flex test on the Hoyt Axis riser, which has the shim system, and it took so long to align the limbs, and I'm so glad I don't have to use those anymore, so I'm really, really happy with that. This is a 25-inch riser, so it's pretty standard. Still has the Vertitune plates, which I'll show you in a minute and talk about where I like mine. I don't see any machine marks, any machine inconsistencies, and it looks really good. Now Hoyt also sent me these weights that go in the pockets of the riser, so you can drop them down inside the pocket and anchor them down. Because there's two different lengths, I'm going to assume you can probably stack them to double them up inside of the pockets to make the pockets heavier. That's kind of cool. I'm excited and happy to see that. I like that it has Made in the USA visible on the outside. I like pride that way. And the grip, you know, as expected, pretty standard Hoyt grip. Medium to high wrist, nice and flat, no slope to the right, which is excellent. I'm a giant fan of. It's definitely for more of a large to an extra large type glove hand. I can just speak from experience. I just made a grip for my wife, and I wear between large and extra large gloves, and it fits me pretty good. It needs a little bit of fill here at the top, like I standard put on all my grips, so nothing to complain about. But the riser looks super sharp. Now, as far as what's in the package, pretty standard expected stuff, I think. You've got your manual. Interesting. So the limb rockers still come with shims, it looks like, that you can adjust the straightness of the limbs if there was any sort of inconsistency there. The longer 3/16 one is nice to see. They still come with the stick-on super rest. Next comes the Vertitune plates. So you've got 3 of them, low, medium, and high. And I like the actual graduations on the end of the clicker plate that shows the, your draw length basically for your clicker position. I like that. I like that they've gone to that. Now, along with the Vertitune plates are 2 Vertitune backing plates with the screw. One's in the middle, that's the medium plate, and then one that's offset, that's for the low and the high. You just flip them. Looks like it's the same exact grip, it's just white instead of black, so it's kind of nice. You know, they give you 2 grips with 1 bow. That's nice. Yeah, they look identical, it's just one's black, one's white. You can accessorize then. I am going to use the high Vertitune plate. Now, the reason that I like the high Vertitune plate is because in the past I've done a lot of testing and I found I like the high plate much better than any other plate setting. The reason is, I'll quickly, briefly go over why I prefer it, but essentially in the past when the RX came out, I believe. Yeah, the Formula RX. When it first came out, the plunger hole was the medium plate setting. So that means the middle plate, the medium setting on these. And Brady and I were having issues with clearance when we went indoors. So we talked to Doug, who's the engineer at Hoyt, and they machined a riser with the plunger hole an 1/8 inch higher than the standard RX plate, which is the actual high plate on these. And it shot fine for indoors because we then started having clearance issues. Or we then no longer had clearance issues, so it was good. And then because we had the risers, we just built them for outdoors as well. Put the X10 on it and went and shot it outside, and it actually shot better for some reason. It was a bit more forgiving, and we felt like we shot tighter groups. So we did some talking back and forth between Doug, Brady, and myself, and what we can kind of guess that why the high plate shot better for us or was more forgiving was, if you kind of like envision the center line of the bow, the middle point of the bow, and then you measure from the center line of the bow to the pressure point where you push your pressure in the grip, and then the center line of the bow to the plunger height, we found that the higher the plate was for the high Vertitune plate or the 1/8 inch higher plunger hole on the Formula RX, the measurement from the center line to the pressure point and the center line to the center of the arrow were equal with the higher plate, and they were a little bit off with the medium plate. So I like the higher plate for that reason. In the past, it's shot better for me. Plus, the arrow also moves up on the bow. It gives me a little bit more leverage against myself. I can add more weight on the stabilizers to compensate and make me hold better. I just overall really like the high plate. So I'm putting the high plate on. I'm gonna start bolting all my accessories on first. So the holes for the sight are pretty far back on the riser, so you have to use the rear holes on the actual sight block, at least on the Excel sight block that I use. So there's, you know, no complaints there at all. It's just to be noted, you have to use the rear, not the front holes. At least for me, because of the clicker that I'm using, this gold AAE gold micro adjustable, it seats everything together better and there's a lot less vibration. It's just something that has happened in the past and still the same on all the Hoyts. Everything screws together super nice as expected. I have to put new tape on my Shibuya arrow rest here because I'm going to be shooting X10s out of this. All right, so I did some testing on these Velos limbs already. I rated them in my limb torsional rigidity tester, which tests the limb's resistance to twisting at brace height. And I'll post some clips in this video so you can check that out and see a little bit of it. But if you're interested in seeing this limb rated along with 8 other sets of limbs, I'll have a link in the description below for that video, plus a card at the top up there for you to check out. Okay, we have the Hoyt Velos on, and everything's all set again in the same parameters. Wow. 1:16. That's a big difference. So that is quite shocking to see such a vast difference in the limb setups right there. And I was very surprised how stiff torsionally these were compared to any other limb that I tested. It was by far and above the stiffest limb that I tested. So it was very interesting to see. One thing that I noted and didn't really say anything, actually the limbs fell out of my other bow. So I want to see how they work in the Hoyt ones. And it looks like, and it could be due to the clear coat, because the matte clear is so thin. It doesn't, for the same thing, this is the top limb bolt, and it just comes right out. If I tip it over, it probably will fall out when I let go. Yes, it will. So if I put it in and I tip it to catch it, it just falls out. So to me, it's a little loose. I would like it to see a little more snug than that because it would keep the alignment more consistent. Now, do I feel play? Is the next question. If I have the limbs aligned just right, I'm going to say I've got about a 10,000ths click back and forth between the limbs, the tips, the forks of the limb and the limb bolt. I wish it was a little tighter than that. Yeah, if I push down against the base of the limb, it clicks back and forth. So it's not as tight as I would like to see. So I don't know. I just think that the limb itself, the alignment can potentially change depending on if it seats this way versus this way. Doesn't matter a whole lot. It's really hard to say. I'd like to test it out and see during my alignment of this bow and see what happens. But the bottom limb looks like the same thing. It just falls right out. And I probably have a similar amount of play here. Yeah, I've got at least a 10,000ths click there, maybe more. But they click in and out, you know, as expected, as I've seen in the past. Hoyt sent me some other strings that will match their bows because their limb tips are slightly further out on the limbs. So you need roughly a 1/4 inch longer string than your standard limbs. So I'm going to see if this will get me close as far as brace height is concerned. Oh. Only because the strings they sent me are set up for small groove knocks and I shoot large groove knocks. So I don't want to have to reserve if I don't have to. These limbs are a little harder to string, just like some of the other limbs out there that are matte finish. Because they're a little rougher, it's harder to string. As you saw, I was struggling a bit there. Just because of the finish, my hand doesn't want to slide on that. Just something to note. Limb setting in the pockets as normal. Give a quick brace height check. I'm actually not too high, so I may be able to use this string, just take a couple twists out to get me down to the right brace height. At least the brace height that I like. Right now I'm at 9 inches, which is pretty much the maximum I would shoot with this setup, this 70-inch bow, 25-inch riser and long limbs. So it's not that far off. Tiller, it's pretty good. It's exactly where I want it to be for my recurve setup. So fresh out of the box, didn't even touch the tiller bolts. Hoyt's doing their job as far as Olympic style recurve is concerned and building tiller into their limbs, it looks like. So that's really, really nice to see. It's exactly, honestly, where I like it. Just about 3/16 of an inch, give or take. So that means just over 1/8 of an inch in split. That's shorter in the bottom. Give this a pull back. So this is pretty similar to the normal drawing that I would expect from a Hoyt. It's going to feel very different once I put stabilizers on it, but it's a little softer down at brace height, maybe a little bit stiffer than Hoyt's in the past, and then it really starts to come on as you come through the mid draw cycle, like in that 24 to 25 pound range, and then it starts really coming on as normal. So I'm probably going to like these at 70 meters if I had to guess. But like I said, these limbs are just so stiff torsionally, it's really nice to see. So now I'm going to work on some basic setup as far as alignment is concerned, putting a known straight stabilizer on to use as a reference point for the center line of the bow, and using some biter blocks here. So the limbs now are so thin, narrow this way, that the biter block on the smallest setting is just, it's holding on, but it's close to being too narrow. It's just something to note. It's really really close to falling off. So their limbs are very narrow compared to a lot of other limbs out there. If you're interested in learning how I set up and tune my bows from the point of what I just did, taking it out of the box, to being comfortable with shooting them at the Olympic Games or at a world-class world championship type event, I have this reference manual here. It's called Tuning for Performance. It's available on my website, jakekaminski.com. And I take you through step by step how I set up my bows and my tuning methods and my tuning process. And this is a really good manual to have with you, keeping your bow case or something like that to thumb through when you're really working on tuning and setting up your equipment. And like I said, if you're looking for a really good manual and a good reference and learning how I tune and set up my equipment, there will be links in the description below. Plus, I'll put a card at the top up there in case you're wanting to check that out. See if I can find a spot to clamp it so I can get the alignment done on this. I can't really find a good spot to clamp this, so I'm just going to do it the easy way. And they're pretty close. They do need some adjustment. I should have looked at the pocket and seen if there's any sort of locking mechanism inside that locks the lateral movement. I don't think there is, but I'm going to check and reference the manual before I go start moving stuff, just in case. I like how they tell you how to set the limbs in the bow now. That's funny. Plucking the bowstring 1 to 2 inches. Hilarious. I'm laughing at this. So they tell you to pluck the string to set the limbs like I do. 2 inches at the most. And I'm laughing because many international shooters essentially dry fire their bows when they set their limbs in. They'll pull it back like 15, 20 inches and let her go and let it set. It's crazy. Hilarious. To make lateral adjustments, looks like I can just move them. There is no locking bolt unless there's a locking cap on top, but I don't think so, so I can just go straight to moving. I wonder how they keep their alignment from moving and drifting over time, but I don't know. We'll find out. I'll play with it. So they got a little bit of a thread locker in there or something like that, and that's what locks it in place and keeps it from moving. But because they use such a large diameter bolt, like this 3/16 head, you'll be able to get a whole lot of torque on it and it won't vibrate loose over time. So that's good. I like that. And loosen the side with the gap. So the first thing I do is I line the string up on the stabilizer, and then I look up at my biter block and I can see where there's a gap on one side. And then I loosen the side of the bow that has that gap and I chase it with the other side. Happy to say, official new Jake world record of aligning a Hoyt bow because of the new system. Super happy to report that. Very easy, straightforward to adjust. Because it has the limb rockers, I'm going to check the limb just to see how it looks. Good on the top, pretty good on the bottom. Pretty much as good as I can possibly get it. Tracks just fine. So I don't need to adjust the rockers at all. And that is something that I am excited to play with. They are called limb rockers. I'm excited to move those around. This is in the performance position where they are on the all the way out setting. So supposedly what they do is it changes the feel through the clicker. The performance version has a more of a, basically a stacking effect. And in the smooth setting, it will reduce the amount of tension building through the clicker zone. Now, if I was string walking, it'd be really interesting to play with them in different positions, top and bottom. But I probably won't tell you about that. I don't know what it would do, to be honest. The brace height on the 25-inch and long limbs recommends from 8 3/4 to 9.5. So right now I am at 9 inches, so I'm kind of in the middle of the range, if not a little bit on the low end. So 8 3/4 puts me almost at the brace height I shoot all of my win and wins at. So that's just interesting. That's something different that I'm not, I wasn't aware of. It must have been just a slight change for whatever reason, and that's interesting. So honestly, so far, just for the sake of the no more shims in the limb bolt alignment system, I'm really happy with this. It is aligned very, very easily. And I'm a fan of that, and I'm happy with that a lot. Very, very happy with it. So I'm putting my standard stabilizer setup that I always put on this. Well, one thing I didn't check was the balance of the bow, the raw balance. And see, it's just a little bit bottom pocket heavy. So not quite as bottom pocket heavy as most Hoyts in my experience, but there's nothing wrong with this. All right, so I'm gonna put the bow back together. I put one of my favorite tried and true Hoyt grips on, and I'm glad to say that the old wooden grips mount up just fine. So I'm glad I don't have to customize a new grip. Now the stock grips, they work fine. I just really prefer this grip that I made years ago. All right, so I got the bow together now. Give it a draw. I mean, it definitely stacks through the clicker, but again, you can adjust these rockers, the limb rocker in the pocket. So it's gonna be interesting to play with. I like it. I like the look of the riser. I like the cutouts. I like that it looks relatively balanced. You know, everything looks great on it. And I'm excited to play with it on this setup here with Olympic style recurve. I do have the weights, the barebow weight system, as well as the formula to play with too. So I'll probably be doing some of the videos in the future playing with that type of stuff. And I have the extra long Velos too. So I'm going to be playing with many different setups and many different configurations just to see how it goes and what I think of them and give some feedback on them, because there are so many different versions of risers out there these days, as well as limbs, even from just the same manufacturer. It's pretty interesting. It's totally changed. It's totally different compared to where it used to be, where when I grew up, when I was coming up in the sport, there really was no options out there. Now there's a million different options of different types. It's pretty cool. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take the camera outside after I warm up, and I'm gonna shoot it at 30 meters and get it tuned. Now I'm gonna leave it here in the performance setting and play with the limb pockets, the limb rockers, and see how it feels there. And after I get it tuned, I'll probably put it in different settings. I'll put it in the medium and the soft setting, see if it affects the tune at all. I've been told it doesn't, which is kind of crazy to think. And I want to play with it and see how that goes. And then afterwards, I'm going to shoot it through a chronograph up close to see the actual speed. And then I'll bring the bow back inside and weigh it and see what weight these limbs tune at, because I have no idea. And I like to do this because I have no idea what the limbs are set at now. I didn't weigh it, as you saw, and I truly did not. So I am not sure what the actual limb weights are, or the draw weight is. I'm outside now. I'm at 30 meters here, and I have a camera for you downrange, so you'll be able to see impacts. So I have no idea where my sight was supposed to be. and how the arrows were gonna hit and stuff like that. So don't pay attention too much to the impacts in the beginning until I get it sighted in as well. So far, I'm actually surprised in how good it feels. Actually, very, very low vibration. Not quite as snappy as a foam limb, but very smooth, even though this is on the performance setting of the actual rocker setting. But this bow may be very light. I haven't shot a bare shaft yet, and I'm gonna guess I'm gonna have to go up a little bit on the limb bolts to get these arrows attuned. But it feels very good. No vibration after the shot. No real unwieldy harmonics or anything. So right out of the box, definitely one of the better feeling bows, especially vibrationally after the shot. You know, I didn't have to adjust much in the way of anything yet. Although it is a higher brace height than I normally shoot, but it is well within the range that they normally recommend, and if in fact a little bit on the low end. Alright, I'm going to shoot a bare shaft because I'm pretty well sighted in now. Definitely feels light draw weight wise. So I'm going to guess this is going to hit stiff quite a bit. Yep, so it's definitely a little stiff. Yeah, white, high left. I'm gonna go down and get those arrows and start making some adjustments to get this thing tuned right. So I'm gonna go up 2 turns on these limb bolts. I guess Hoyt's not doing the call it limb bolts anymore. Whoop. Well, that's all the way in. We're just gonna go all the way in on the top and then go in as far as I can on the bottom with the proper tiller setup. So hopefully I don't have to get different limbs to get this thing to tune. Let's find out. So that was just about a 1 5/8 turns up. These sure are stout limbs to string. 8 7/8, 22.5 centimeters, which is the brace height I normally shoot. I'm gonna shoot it here for a little bit. 7 1/4, 7 1/4. So it's an even tiller. I need to back the top out a little bit. All right, hopefully this will get me closer. Knocking point's low. We'll adjust that a little now. Still have movable knocking points on from when I shot the Uka limbs, the SX Plus. If you haven't seen that review yet and you'd be interested, links in the description and a card at the top up there in case you're interested. I think it's still a little stiff. I can't quite see. I might be able to get there with plunger tension. I'm gonna go down there and check them out and see what I got because I can't quite tell from this angle. All right, so before I adjust the limb rocker setting, I just want to make note of where I'm at. I'm at 22.5 centimeters. Now, like I said, I'm just going to take the limb rockers and I'm going to go from as stiff as they are, as stiff as they can be, to as weak as they can be, right in one move. So I've heard some stuff about these, but I've forgotten every bit of it. I think it doesn't change your tune. And I think it minimally, barely measurable, detectable changes your draw weight. So this will be an interesting test to see if it changes the tune, the impact point, or the brace height. It's a pretty easy thing to adjust actually, so we'll see how much of a difference it actually makes. Okay, so the way I unstrung my bow, I took the string off and I'm gonna put it back on the exact same way. No twists lost, nothing changed. A little easier to string. Feels definitely a little more vibratey, potentially a little more soft. And the brace height did not change. It's still 22.5 centimeters. So that's pretty cool. I did not change the limb bolts. I didn't change anything other than the rocker setting. So let's see if it feels any different and see if the tune changed. It's definitely smoother through the clicker, more like I would prefer. And it looks like maybe I'm hitting an inch lower. Not a ton lower. See if the tune changes. Didn't really change the preload as much as it changed the feel at full draw. That one was me. The wind blew my top limb and made me cant, so we are not going to pay attention to that bear shaft. It's a little too windy for this. Just going to have to wait. All right, I'm gonna actually go get them so it's a good fair try. But it is much smoother through the clicker zone, that is for sure. I'm surprised how much of a difference it makes. Now, I wouldn't say it's like as spongy as those SX Plus limbs that I felt, but it's definitely a real change from adjusting those limb rockers. So that's really cool. A very neat little feature that you don't find anything else. It's honestly pretty neat. While it's a little calmer, let's hope I can get these arrows in. And if not, I'm just gonna wait for the wind to die. I'm honestly amazed it made such a difference in the way it feels. So far, the tune may not have changed all that much. I'm gonna go pull the arrows and double check, but I don't know, maybe there's a little bit more residual vibration after the shot on the low setting, maybe a teeny bit. Otherwise it just feels easier to get through the clicker. You know, it's a little bit smoother, a little bit easier to pull against, but it still has stability. I don't feel unsure of the position I'm in. Maybe it's a little too soft for me, but I can always adjust it to the middle setting. So I'll play with it over time and see what I like, especially once I go back to 70. Because it doesn't look like it changed the impact much at all, maybe this much lower at the most. And I'm gonna go check and pull the arrows and see what it did with the tune, but it looks like it basically stayed the same. So yeah, it looks like the tune changed less than what a 1/4 inch or a 1/4 turn on the limb bolts would do, rather. So really did not change basically at all with the limb rocker change. Maybe stiffened up a teeny bit. So I'm gonna guess maybe it lowered the peak weight a teeny bit. I don't know. I'm gonna get my chronograph. I'll take it down to basically blank bale distance, and we'll put some arrows through the chronograph on the full weak and then the full stiff position. So this is on the full loose setting as far as the limb rockers are concerned. 205 feet per second. I'll shoot 3 arrows each. Kind of take the average, I guess. Hopefully they're all the same. .205. .203 on that one. We'll see. I aimed in a different spot, so I didn't hit arrows. Where the arrow goes through the chronograph can affect the overall speed. I'll put it right next to the others. .204. Let's just call it 205. I had 2 of the same, so that's good enough. You know, you could really confuse people if in the middle of a tournament, if you weren't feeling up to the day, make them real weak. And then when you're feeling strong, make them real stiff. It's just to confuse people. Could you imagine in the middle of a scoring round, somebody messing with these? Especially if they're shooting well. This is now the full stiff position. All right, same distance from the chronograph, same arrows, not the bear shaft, same arrows. Only change is the limb rocker position. So it was full weak, now full stiff. .204. So full week was 205, 205, 204. .204. .204 again. So 204 on full stiff and more than that on full week. Does the speed variance have anything to do with vertical accuracy consistency? Who knows, hard to say. I'd have to go back to 70 and do a round of each and see if my vertical impact points are any different on full week to full stiff. So this is just a fun little thing to see any sort of change in the actual speed variance. And that could be me, you know, 1 foot per second change really isn't that much of a difference. When I go inside and I measure the draw weight of the bow in the 2 different limb rocker settings, I will weigh my arrows so you guys can see how many grains per pound I'm shooting. Now, as far as what weight the bow feels like, I'm gonna say the bow feels in the 45 pound range if I had to guess. You know, somewhere in the 45, low 45s to upper 45 pound range. That's what it feels like. In a lower limb rocker setting, it definitely feels low 45s. In the upper limb rocker setting, it feels in the upper 45s, maybe 46 pounds. So it's gonna be interesting to see if the weight is any close to that. And I will do my personal preference of tried and true method of foot per second per pound once we get inside and I find out the weight of the bow. And we'll see where it's at. This is on the full stiff setting of the limb rockers. Just let the scale zero out. This is in pounds, the clicker. I can now bring it the rest of the way out with the press itself. Going to use my phone here, and as I get close, I will stop drawing till it drops. 47.66 pounds. That's honestly quite shocking to me. I thought it was going to be much less than that. Either I'm getting stronger or the bow feels better than I thought it does as far as the draw weight is concerned. And we'll see if the draw weight changes at all without changing anything, including any twist, any brace height, or nothing, just the limb rocker setting. Okay. And we're at 47.38 pounds. It settled down to 47.34. So that is, you know, pretty expected. I'm going to let this down before we do a foot per second per pound comparison calculation. 204 divided by 47.58 pounds is 4.29 feet per second per pound for the stiff setting. Now, really quick, I'm going to get my arrow scale and weigh an arrow because many people keep asking what type of arrow weight am I shooting so they can compare foot per second, grains per pound, so they can just, know what I'm using. Basically 366 grains is what I'm shooting. 365.6 grains. That's what that arrow is. Do another one just to be sure. Yeah, 366. So pretty much that's what it is. So that's roughly 7.71 grains per pound is what I shoot my recurve setups at with my X10s. I don't know, whatever that means. Apparently that's what people use to compare speeds or something like that. So at 4.71 grains per pound, I'm getting 204 to 205 feet per second with this current setup. So just a bit of data for you guys. That way you can figure that out, I guess. Yeah, so what do I actually think of this setup? Now, the fit and finish is pretty good. The limbs are a little loose on the limb bolts, but let's check out the limb and give it a good look over now that I've shot it. There's a little bit of polishing. So you can see down here, there's two distinct marks where the limb rockers sit in against the bow. So you can definitely tell that the limb rockers do change positions and they push on the limbs in different areas. I think that these are definitely the stiffest limbs that I've tested torsionally. They feel pretty good. I was surprised to see I was shooting 47 and a half pounds instead of the 45 pounds that I was guessing. I was pretty much dead on with the Uka limbs as far as my guessing was concerned, so that's interesting. The riser, super easy to align compared to older Hoyts with the shims. I'm so glad that they got rid of that. This different adjustment system is just way easier to use. The limb rockers, excellent, neat little feature. Like the Vertitune plate, just some tunability. I like the high plate personally. I wish the grips had come wood. I prefer wood over the plastic because if I was going to shoot this bare bow, I would cut the grip as low as I possibly could, and because of the cavity in the back of the grips themselves, there'd be a total open hole there because it would shave away to nothing because it's not solid plastic like the wood is. But I understand that the wood grips are a lot more difficult to maintain quality control over, especially over time. The little extra features in the boxes are excellent, good value adds there. The finish on the riser is beautiful, and overall I'm quite happy with this setup. I can't wait to shoot it at 70 meters. After this video and another session of shooting, I'm gonna go shoot these at 70 meters. I'll probably shoot them on the medium to soft limb rocker setting because I just think that it's gonna be best for me and it feels best for me to shoot my highest scores in that medium setting would be my guess. Maybe the soft setting, one of those two, not sure. I like the feel. The feel's great, very little vibration left over. A lot of the vibration that I used to feel in the past was because of extremely stiff stabilizers with a either non-existent extension or a solid aluminum extension. So because I'm using the AAE Gold vibration dampening extension basically that I worked with them to design, I feel basically no feedback into my handle and it's totally dead. I can hear some vibration, but I don't feel anything in my hand. Anyway, I do have a speed test that I am going to do. I'm going to compare these Velos limbs, the Uka SX Plus, and the MXT10 limbs from Win & Win. So if you haven't yet, hit that subscription button and the notification bell so you're notified when I upload that video. I'm super excited to produce that, and now that I've reviewed this bow, I have done all 3 sets of limbs, and I can finally put that speed test to the test and see how it goes. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, consider hitting the subscription button and the notification bell, as well as the like button. I would appreciate it. Also, please consider supporting my channel. If you head to my website, jakekaminski.com, there'll be info and links on Patreon, apparel, books, and equipment sales, PayPal donate button, a P.O. box to send things to, and above all else, please share this video because there's no better advertising than word of mouth.